Wham! Another agency or marketer fucked me over and ruined my ability to scale.
It's what so many of you out there sound like, acting like it's these shit agency and marketers that you hire. You turn no accountability or point of blame fingers back at yourself as the business owner in these deals, and that's why you keep continuously getting fucked by agencies and marketers that you hire, because you have no idea what the fuck you're doing in marketing, so that ultimately leads you to just getting burnt by absolute dog shit marketers and agency owners that you work with that you don't know how to vet. You don't actually know who you're looking for. You don't know the characteristics in these agencies or marketers that you need to have a keen eye for. You don't know how to go into it knowing the plans that they propose making sense or just straight up leading you into the slaughterhouse, aka your dollars being cremated, okay? You have to understand that the responsibility of you getting fucked by these agency owners and marketers that you've worked with up to this point does also fall on you. But don't you worry, I'm gonna hold your hand to glory in this video. I'm gonna make you, by the end of this, understand fully how to vet, how to make sure you're actually working with the right people, what working with the right people really looks like, what should they present, you know? How should they show you a plan that leads you turning your money into more money at a very high level of certainty? What do you do as a backup in the instance it doesn't work out? What are the deal points and principles entering into this whole thing that makes sense? What are the incentives that you should give the counterparty that make the most sense? And a few more little tips and tidbits. I am Jeremy Haynes. All we talk about on this channel is hitting $1 million months, and this topic is no different. This, if not out of all the topics we could cover, is one of the most important ones that you could understand as the business owner. How to work with marketers, how to work with agency owners properly, and how to stop getting fucked over by them. So it's a true honor to be able to help you in this video here today. For those who don't know or who are new to the boy, all we talk about around here is scaling to $1 million months. We've currently helped 41 different businesses get there, and we've helped sustain many of those businesses at that level and go beyond it. Whether you're here making a couple hundred grand or the minimum of 100K a month and trying to get to your first million a month, or whether you're at that million a month trying to hit the next million a month, I got you. We don't make any income claims around here. By no means are we representing with any of the information talked about in today's video or any other video on my channel for that matter. All we're doing is handing down the lessons from those currently 41 different businesses that we've helped been there, done that with, and handing them down to you right here on YouTube. You can do whatever you want with the information, but taking the information and acting as though it's an income claim, you can't do that. For those that are already a subscriber, welcome back. It's an absolute pleasure to have you here today. You're gonna love this one. So first things first, you have to go into it having a plan of action that is mathematically backed and quantified into a financial model to know what the probabilities of success and failure are and what the KPIs need to be for each step of the specific marketing plan that you are going to execute with that agency and marketer. You have to know those things going into the deal. Most people, and this is what is most shocking to me, they do little to no financial modeling. The business owners don't do financial modeling, and the shit agency owners that you hire don't do any financial modeling. It is insane over the years of mentoring a little over 4,000 agency owners, how many times I have to reiterate such a base level lesson of make sure you always go into the deal doing math. Okay? Model it out before you do it. Because if you do it without the modeling, you're going to learn the lessons that the model would have exposed to you before you risked any of your dollars. You would have gone into it knowing what the KPIs need to be, how hard and high up those KPIs can fluctuate or how low they can go before it makes no more financial sense to continue operating with that model, and therefore you need to pivot to something else. You have to go into it with the clarity of the math, okay? You have to know. If you don't, you're just taking an unnecessary, uncalculated risk, okay? So a lot of the times, here's one big mistake that a lot of business owners make. They will go into it just saying, I have a X amount of dollar budget for you to spend on ads, okay? And even worse, they say, I'd love for you to spend it on this. you know? If you knew what you were doing, you'd already be doing it, okay? The common misconception or the counter argument to that is,
well, no, I do know what I need to be doing. I just don't have the time to do it.
well, that's bullshit, because if you did, you'd likely hire a more cost-effective payroll position, train them up to do it yourself, and have somebody that long-term is gonna be in-house, only focused on you and your business, and not turn around and focus on all these other businesses as they scale up their business, okay? If you actually knew what you were doing, you'd be doing it, okay? You need to work with an agency and a marketer that can take the things like your budget recommendations and the potential funnels or conversion mechanisms that you want to drive traffic to, and take those things, and yeah, they might be the things that you drive the traffic to ultimately. That might be the budget that you end up using, but the financial model will reveal whether that's the case. I have so many instances where a client will be like,
Yeah, so I'm thinking that we spend like, $20,000 on like this.
and I'm like, okay, so you're already running traffic to that? And they're like,
Yeah, like we've only spent, $5,000, but we, the ROAS was good.
and I'm like, okay, cool. So like, tell me about the statistics. And we'll go through, let's say it's a call funnel. And we'll start off with like, okay, so first of all, do you have an opt-in on the call funnel? And hopefully the answer is no. But if they say yes, like that adds a step of friction that we want to make sure we model out. We want to then ask like, okay, do you have an application integrated with a scheduler, or do you have a separate application and a separate scheduler? And if so, what's your cost per application? What's your application conversion rate against those opt-ins? What's the quantity of people that applied that then book a call? Therefore, what's your call cost? How many of those calls are they being qualified? Is there conditional logic? What's the cost per qualified call? What's the cost per unqualified call? Then we get to the point, is it a 1-call close or a 2-call close? What's the first call show rate? If there's 2 calls, what's the second call booking rate? What's the second call show rate? And from there, we also then have to obviously factor in close rate and our average order value. And a lot of the times, and this is also kind of funny, even for people that do lightly do math, they always, and I'm not sure why, but this happens so often, always say like the amount of revenue that they get per sale instead of the amount that they actually cash collect. You always want to base the math off of what you cash collect. You can add a second little row down below that one that says like revenue, and you could have separate ROAS numbers and timetables associated with those longer duration timelines that expose how long it takes to capture that revenue, right? But what you want to base like real-time ROAS on is on cash collected, okay? How much cash do you actually get today? Because that is what's going to dictate whether you comfortably cover your credit card billing cycle and that upcoming agency owner or marketer's fee that they hit you with, okay? That has to be factored into the equation. From there, you got gross ROAS, okay? You obviously want to then deduct the advertising cost, the fee that the agency or marketer charges you, the sales commissions, and the cost of goods sold, okay? Once all these things are factored in, plus whatever else you want to factor in, you have net ROAS that you're then going to be able to generate. And that number and that ROAS that you get on the net side of things obviously dictates ahead of time whether everything is actually worth doing or not, okay? And a lot of times when you plug in, like let's use that hypothetical scenario of the client saying, hey, I got $20,000 to gamble, here you go. It might not be enough. It might not be enough, especially when you look at their current statistics fluxing against them a little bit. Like all the time I get people that come to us, whether they're new Inner Circle members, whether they're new Master Internet Marketing members, which you can check out links for down in the description of this video. In addition to that, sometimes we even see this with clients where they've spent like so little money on the thing that they want to market that when they plug like $100,000 a month in expenses against it and ad spend, and they take the same number that they have at 5K for their KPIs and act like that's gonna be the number at scale at $100,000 a month in spend as an example, or several $100,000 a month. And that's just not the case. That's so rarely ever the case. So rarely does your cost per result just stay the same going from 5K in a month to several $100,000 in a month, dude. Okay, it's just not how it works. Your organic audience, yeah, that's great. You got a fucking 70, 80% show rate. What's that look like when you go into fucking ice cold traffic who has no idea who you are, where you're only gonna be able to do that to get the level of spend off that you need to hit $1 million months, okay? It's like you're in a position where you have to then do what's called scenario modeling. So you have like that original financial model and you're gonna triplicate it. You're gonna add at least 3 or 4 options to this, and you're gonna see like a worst, mild, and like ambitious use case scenario for these 3 sets of statistics. Okay, and you're ambitious. I don't want you to go like truly crazy over the top ambitious. Your conservative should be like truly and accurately very conservative. Like kind of like the fucked up scenario is what the conservative should be. How bad? Like literally, if each statistic was as worse as it could possibly be, what is that set of KPIs? That's what the conservative model should be. Too many times do people conservatively guess on these statistics and KPIs, and then they don't actually ever realize like how far the KPIs can flex against them before they snap and break. And that's what the conservative scenario is for. The mild scenario can be what most of you likely are going to model out as conservative. You see, try to be more like middle of the road, but still biasing towards the conservative side in your mild scenario. The ambitious, same kind of logic. It shouldn't be like to the farthest end of the spectrum of how great everything can go. It should be like, hey, if like one of these stats was fucked up, but the rest were like, arguably good, what would that look like? Okay, so moral of the story is what you then get is a very clear picture before you even engage. Like I just did a call with a guy, longtime person that we've known, wants to engage us as a marketing agency. Guy at one point was doing like $1 million plus a month. I think he got it all the way up to 1.4 mil a month is what he was saying his highlights were. And he's just doing a bunch of old school stuff. Things that are no longer working, and he hasn't adapted, and he says his team's like really maxed out. And long story short, he wanted to engage with us to bring in the best. And so we immediately just financial model out some options. He has about $30,000 in a budget that he's willing to test because his revenue had dropped dramatically. It had gone from that 1.4 to like mid-range, couple $100,000 a month. And he was running like really close to his like base where he had to be at just to cover all his expenses and his life. So again, not a ton of money to gamble, pretty much just moving over his existing advertising budget into us. And when we looked at it, we had said, hey, there's really 2 plans that we can do from here, okay? And this is really what you want to look for when you're vetting out a deal, when you're like in the engagement part of the process. And by the way, this can happen at any point in the deal. And I'll give an example of that here shortly after I finish this one, where you have a plan and like you obviously want to stick to a plan and have some backup plans, okay? So for this specific guy, like he was running a call funnel and his cost per call had just ballooned to almost 2x the cost that it previously was. And we had just recently, we had saw a very similar situation with a new Inner Circle member. Guy's doing about $2.5 million a month already, spending upwards of $12K a day, and every dollar above $8K a day in spend just spun the wheels and increased his costs dramatically. And so in both of these scenarios, especially with the guy who's going to engage with us as a client with our agency in this case, I just say, I'm like, well, let's go to the model and let's look at what's going to happen if we can bring it down. And when you looked at like just all the data, okay, and this is the other main thing that's very important to understand. Like we go into the account, we listen to what the client says, and sometimes there's a wide discrepancy between what client feedback is, you as the business owner is saying, and what the actual data says, okay? So we look at both. We don't just want to take the client's word for it, we literally want to go like look at it and see for ourselves, because sometimes there can be a wide discrepancy and we want to clear that up if that's the case right away. But when we go look at the data, in this case, the client's accurate, cost per call ballooned, and we're like, kind of salivating looking at the account. There were so many things that could be done that could drive up the revenue of this business and lower that cost per call back to where it was. Absolutely, undoubtedly, a lot of best practices. And as a matter of fact, a lot of the other statistics throughout that specific call funnel also had a lot of leverage. Everything but the show rate. The guy's show rate was upwards of 72%. So no need to focus on that. Let's focus elsewhere right now, specifically on this cost per call bottleneck. We then have a plan. We then financially model out what it would look like in those 3 scenarios. And I just simply say, I'm like, with what we charge you and with the amount that we need to make, I wonder what a webinar would look like. Are you open to doing a webinar? And this specific guy, he is phenomenal at anything live. Whether it's an in-person event, a virtual event, a challenge funnel, a webinar, like this guy fucking crushes with that kind of stuff. It's a skill set for him, a strength. And so thinking about that, I was like, what if we took that same 30,000 and what if we spent it in the first like week and a half? We had the salespeople focus on people that are already in the pipeline and kind of reviving dead leads that might be sitting there. And that led us to the conclusion like, well, maybe a webinar would be good. So what we do is we do the same exact logic of financial modeling and planning and looking at data with past webinars, plugging in that financial model and just trying to see like, okay, in a conservative, mild, and ambitious scenario, like what would that look like? And here's the thing, coincidentally, looked really good, but very similar to the call return. Okay, so then the question became, well, here's the thing, like, do we want to make the first 30 days bigger by doing a webinar for the first week and a half, and then for the remaining 2.5 weeks in that first 30 days, we just spend on the call funnel? and we use the house money that we generated from the webinar, some of it, of course, we want the client to always pocket money and profit. We take some of that money that was generated and we roll it right into the call funnel, and therefore we conclude to, yeah, a higher amount of spend over the 30 days, but far more revenue being generated. And both conservative estimates looked really good. And so as a plan going into it, that gave us a lot of confidence and certainty that that would be a great approach. Otherwise, we might have just gone into the deal blind like almost all business owners allow agency owners and marketers to do. That's what generally happens on these calls and like why people end up getting fucked. They are oblivious to like what even makes sense. Like this particular client example, I brought it up as for a very specific reason. Like this guy himself is a fucking phenomenal marketer. He's a phenomenal business owner. Every single thing that I'm talking to him about, he understands in depth. In depth, he gets it, okay? He's one of those people that actually gets it and doesn't have the time to do it himself, and also knows, because he gets it, that his current team's just maxed the fuck out and doesn't have the ability to solve the problem. So he's willing to spend the dollars necessary to solve the issue elsewhere. And he also knows, as I'm sure you do too, following my information and watching this video with me today, that yes, I have great information, but I'm also a great executor, okay? So when we come into this guy's business and we scale the fuck out of it, it's not gonna be a surprise to anybody because both him and I were on the same page, okay? And this is what's really important to understand. Both parties agree that the plan makes sense, okay? This is where most of you get it wrong. Most of you think you have a plan, and in reality, you just have a plan to get fucked, but you don't know it because you aren't aware. You aren't skilled as a marketer. You aren't clear on the math. You don't even know the data in some instances. Most of you who are watching this, I presume that to a degree, you got your thumb on the pulse of your business. I assume that you're smart. I assume that you sitting here watching my channel are the person that I'm trying to talk to, which is at a couple $100K a month. You know the game, but you don't know all of it yet. And that's why you're sitting here trying to learn more. And for those of you who are serious about learning more and want to take the next step above and beyond all the value you get from my YouTube channel, check out the links down in the description. I have an inner circle program where you've got to be making at least $100K a month. I had a guy join in there just the other day doing $2.5 million a month, joining into it. A month before that, we had a guy doing 1.6 mil a month join in. Most people, to be fair, are around 200 to 300K a month. We now have 17 people in the group that make more than $1 million a month already, or that have gotten there while they've been a part of the group. We don't make income claims and tell you you're gonna hit $1 million a month joining into it, but it's a great place to be if you're rich trying to get a hell of a lot richer, I'll tell you that. And there's plenty of great things that come with it. And I would encourage and implore you, if you are somebody that's serious about growth and you understand the gap between the lack of knowledge you have now and the knowledge that you need, and closing that gap leading to the extra revenue that you believe to be real for you. Press that link down in the description for the inner circle and go apply. At the least, go check it out. It makes a lot of sense for me to push you to do that because I've seen firsthand all the results that people joining into that group generate. It's phenomenal. And on that page, you'll also find plenty of examples, a wide range of examples of what types of results and what the experiences have been of both long-term members and new members alike. There's also, for those of you who aren't making 100K a month yet and still want my help, a link to the Master Internet Marketing program below, which is also phenomenal. It's super in-depth, 7 weeks of classes. We have an upcoming live cohort in the end of the summer coming up. It's gonna be phenomenal. It's very important you understand this. Each one of those 7 weeks of classes is like a 3 to 5 hour class. Down in the description, you'll find a link for the first week of that class, specifically the first 3 to 5 hour live class, not the homework library or anything else that you can get access to, again, at no cost, just to check out if you like my learning style and whether you're actually gonna appreciate how in-depth the classes truly are. Each class covers a different topic, extensive homework libraries in between each live class, worksheets during the live class to help with retention. It's also a phenomenal place for those who are making serious money to train their staff. We have many different business owners that have fleets of marketers and just people in their business in general along with themselves that for a very cost-effective approach with us in a non-recurring way, just a transaction, will get you the training and the help that your organization needs. Again, I'd really encourage you to check out those links down in the description. Okay, back to this. So you keep getting fucked because you can't close that gap, because you don't know better. And as a result, like, you have these conversations with agency owners and marketers and you both just kind of guess, you know, you're just because you're not doing math, because you don't have a financial model.
You're just kind of shooting in the dark, just saying, yeah, I mean, this kind of seems like it could work. I guess it makes sense. Like, let's try it out.
And then you end up getting absolutely burnt, okay? And then you start blaming other people instead of blaming yourself and closing that education gap, okay? So it's very important to understand, my clients who have made the most money, it's not like they're well-versed in sitting in the ads manager. Sometimes they are. Sometimes the best ones are. But it's more so the fact that they just understand the game and they understand the things that they must do, and therefore they can hold people accountable to doing it. That becomes their greatest role, is not knowing the tactics of how to actually do it, but understanding the strategy and the bigger picture of how it's done and what needs to be done to actually drive the result. Okay, let me give you another great example of that. If you keep getting burnt by agency owners or by marketers, and you're wondering what to do, if you're already in a deal and things just aren't really going that well for you, and you could tell like you're getting teed up just to get absolutely fisted, okay? Here's a great piece of advice: bottleneck analysis, okay? Bottleneck analysis is one of those fundamental things that you must know, and that your marketers obviously must know, and that your agency owners must know. But again, a lot of people don't do. It's very simple. What you're looking for is a contraction within the process, okay? So let's just start by saying each step of your funnel is represented by one of these little lines, from like the lead being generated to the lead closing, okay? Throughout the process, there's likely a point where there's a choke, okay? And as a result, nothing really flows to those subsequent steps where the money's actually collected and people eventually get upsold because of this simple choke point right here. And this choke point, because you have no proper reporting from the agency and you don't understand any of the analytics that you're really looking at, and you're not really monitoring the analytics and you're just kind of taking the agency's word for it or the marketer's word for it that things are going to be okay and kind of turn around, you ultimately have no fucking clue what and how to hold that person accountable to do. Bottleneck analysis, if you knew how to do it, would give you the clarity and insight to be like, hey, why are we not paying attention to this step right here? This step right here is clearly contracted and is acting as the choke point where all my flow that I'm putting through this funnel and all my dollars that I'm risking to fucking bet on this thing are all contracted right here. So there's only a tiny little bit coming out the other side. Who's putting attention on that? Like, who's fixing that right now? Now, although yes, I want to be very clear in saying, a great agency, a great marketer who's very well trained, they would already know to do that too. But you would have hired that agency in the first place if you would have known how to properly interview an agency or a marketer. You could have asked them by showing them a set of statistics. As an example, let's say you started off with a $55 CPM. Let's say that you had a 1.37% link click-through rate. Let's say that you were running traffic to a webinar and your webinar opt-in rate's 32%. Let's say that your webinar show rate is currently 11%. Let's say that you're running a webinar where you're pushing people to book a call. So by the time that people reach the pitch where you actually are pitching the product, you have an 80% retention rate of the people who joined live to being there during the pitch. Your conversion rate to getting people to book a call, let's say hypothetically, is 30%. Your show rate to the people who booked a call is only 50%. And let's use the example, the close rate is 45%. If you presented each one of those statistics and you then asked that marketer or agency owner, which one of these would you put your attention on, assuming that the ROAS was 1.3 and we wanted to improve it? Which one of these statistics would you likely pay attention to if these were the statistics that you analyzed? And just seeing, like, what's their answer? Where are they gonna put their attention? I'll give you a great example. If you didn't know that a 1.37% click-through rate, it's not great, but a 2% click-through rate, a link click-through rate, and that's the other difference right there. Did you even know the difference between a regular click-through rate and a link click-through rate? What's the benchmark for a link click-through rate? 2%, like 2% going to 4%, that's pretty fucking hard. I know some of the literal greatest marketers on earth that get, like, at the best case scenario, like a 6 to 8%. And it's like a unicorn for them. Most of their great ads are doing like somewhere in the 1% range, maybe at best like a 3% range. And although yes, I absolutely acknowledge as a marketer, there's anomalies and there's people who just have creative, it's their strength, like creative powers to get consistently higher click-through rates. It's like if your ads and the guy you're hiring is not a creative powerhouse, are you sitting down like filming stuff and you have an in-house editing team, like would that be the place you put the attention? Are the $55 CPMs expensive? You know, it's like in that example, you know, the show rate to the webinar itself being 11%. I like to play the doubles game when I'm doing bottleneck analysis. Like which statistic is the easiest to double or the easiest to reduce in half if that answer is appropriate instead. The 11% show rate going to 22%, that seems very realistic. You know, and again, the show rate on the back end, like the 50% show rate after somebody watched a webinar, that could be omitted as the marketer's responsibility and be pointed at the actual person who did the webinar failing to get them to show up based on how they framed the call. However, again, from extreme ownership perspective, if the marketer assumed some form of responsibility and accountability over that metric too, 50%, that's awful for a webinar booked call show rate. Getting that up to like an 80%, that seems super realistic too. And if they take those numbers and plug it into a financial model, I mean, Jesus, how euphoric can it get if they did that? Imagine that. Versus imagine instead they just guessed. This is one of the, like if you know the statistics for what the benchmarks are and what they could be, okay? And in addition to that, if you, okay, going into it also knew what specific bottleneck was easiest to double in that example and you modeled that out and you knew the biggest impact driver, I mean, how fucking sick could it be when you go to hire somebody? It's immediately revealing whether you're talking to a bunch of turds or not. You get what I'm saying? Okay, so I'll give you another example. We had a client just recently, it was a new client, guy who wanted to come and work with us, a referral, and you know, he hits us up, we get on a call, we jump right into it, like, hey, what are you doing right now? You know, like, what's your current thing? And he's doing like high couple $100,000 a month. He's at like the $700,000-800,000 a month range. And again, he wanted to bring in the big dogs. He was new to this business and he was looking at like, they're doing daily webinars over there. So he starts breaking it down. He's like, you know, 18 days out of the month besides these days here, like weekends and these 2 other random days, we're not doing the webinars, but every other day, the 18 days we are. So this daily webinar pushed to a challenge funnel ticket. So the main way they actually generate all their money is through a challenge funnel. And the challenge funnel ticket was like $300. So they're driving traffic through a webinar to buy a $300 ticket. And then they need people to show up to that at a high rate to actually then convert them on their high ticket thing. Their high ticket product in this case was like $20,000. So think about this high level of effort they're exerting. And in reality, it's like, I looked at that right away and I was like, this is an insane bottleneck. Like I told them, I was like, I just had a client that did $4 million off a challenge. 600K of that was from ticket sales and 3.4 mil of that was from 10K upsells. And the dumbest thing that we did throughout the entire challenge was promote it through a webinar with like 50,000 of those ad dollars. Our cost per purchase was like hundreds of dollars. Whereas when we drove traffic straight to the sales page that we could also build for that same client with a few upsells behind it, we were 1.9x front-end ROAS positive on those ticket sales. And I told him about the pricing strategy. And by the way, we have an entire video on this channel dedicated just to the exact client that I just talked about, that challenge funnel that did $4 million. You can go check out that video on challenge funnels after this if you'd like. But again, back to my point, okay? I'm articulating to this client, I'm like, dude, what you're doing makes no sense. Like what makes way more sense is let's just fix the sales page and try to spend all that money that you're putting towards these webinars towards that challenge funnel. Like, let's try to get that cracking. And if we do, like, we could be front-end ROAS positive, just like we were in this other deal. But even if we weren't, like, your current cost per purchase to your challenge is like $500. So if we got your cost per purchase down to even like $300 and you were just breaking even, that would cut out 18 days worth of like 3 hours a day webinar effort, you know? And it would make a lot more sense with doing that instead. And the client, like you could see right away, they were like, dude, I've always been told that it makes sense to do it this way instead. And we had a new inner circle member join in just recently too, where they were like, oh, this agency owner I'm working with, like he contractually obligated this inner circle member to promote the challenge funnel with 15 grand a week in spend, going towards that dumbass promotion strategy of promoting it through a webinar instead of driving traffic straight to the sales page of the challenge, okay? This resulted in this client having like dozens of buyers for the challenge like a week or two out from the challenge starting, which would have resulted, if you just financially modeled out how that kind of challenge would play out with average challenge funnel statistics, to be fucking awful, like a nightmare. It's nightmare. And again, nobody did math. Nobody realized the exceptionally high level of friction because neither one of these examples I just provided knew any better. They didn't even think, Oh, I could just drive traffic straight to the fucking sales page of the challenge, you know? Instead, they just listened to some random fucking people who told them, oh yeah, you wanna do it this way, okay? And if you're asking, yeah, both of the marketer and the agency owner in those two examples were fired, okay? And no longer are on those deals, rightfully so, idiots. You know, it's like my point being, bottleneck analysis would tell you that entire approach of like adding the webinar and all the subsequent steps of friction with it is just that, excessively high levels of friction. Makes no sense to do that approach. So here's my point, okay? When you know what to do and you have a person who knows what to do, you collaborate on what is a better thing to do. And then you do math and you financially model it out and you determine like, okay, does that make sense to do? Like, is that gonna be the thing that we commit to here? And how many dollars do we need to commit to it to get it to actually work? That way you're not just guessing on budget, which a majority of people do, okay? This is what ultimately drives businesses who work with agencies and marketers to $1 million months. It makes it so much more real because of the logic I just articulated to you. And of course, there's many other steps, just like everything I talk about here on YouTube. My whole YouTube is me edging you. I give you more value than what you've likely ever seen in somebody else's paid course, because I'm actually in the fucking trenches doing this stuff. And I can share with you 10% of the things that I know and withhold 90% of the good stuff for all my paid things that you can find links for down in the description. And then I could blow your mind and have you realize that was nothing but true when you finally pull the trigger and join into one of my paid offers. And at the very least, go check out some of my other videos. They're all bangers regardless, and you'll still learn a lot. And I look forward to helping you in your journey on getting richer. Subscribe to the channel if you're not already subscribed, and I'll see you in another one.